And my name is DTM Rahman. I am part of the Jaha Toastmasters Club, for which Zak is also currently a member. Let's start having introductions, starting with Sam Arifin. Where are you located?
So I'm dialing in from Canada, more specifically Toronto. Very excited to be here, and this is a topic I believe everyone should be aware of. There is we as Bangladeshis, we know about it, but at the same time, the awareness that needs to go beyond our hometown, beyond Bangladesh, beyond Burma, and the whole Rohingya situation, right? So I believe that it's a great initiative, and I'm happy that some of you have joined us. And Zak is doing it, that's kudos to him for sure.
And to my right on the Zoom chat, we have Kaz. So Kaz, introductions, please.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Just saying hello. I am Zak's father, for those who don't know me directly. So I'm definitely here to, support, listen, and be part of it, and really, really proud and glad to see everybody else here.
To Kazi's right, we have Omar Tamimi. So Omar, a brief introduction, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Pleasure to see everybody. I'm calling in from Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, and very interested in this topic. I think this topic belongs to all of us, and I think everybody should care, and looking forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Omar. To Omar's right on the Zoom call, we have Adian. Adian, brief introduction, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adian, and I'm the cousin of Zak, and I'm coming here from Toronto, Canada, and I'm just very excited to hear more about this topic because it's a crucial topic that I believe everyone should know about. And yeah, that's from me.
Thank you so much, Adian. To the bottom of Adian's square, we have Shifa. Shifa, kindly introduce yourself.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Shifa. I'm from Bangladesh, and I'm here to support Zak for his presentation.
Thank you so much, Shifa. Thank you. Next up is Aisha Al-Asfri. Aisha, please introduce yourself to the group.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aisha Sifri. I'm a member of calling from Saudi, or I'm in from Saudi Arabia, Al-Hassa, member of the Toastmaster Club. And I'm really glad to join this session and to support our colleague Zak, and excited to know more about the topic. As Zak mentioned, it's uncovered or not covered much in the media. So we are really excited to know more, and good luck in his thesis.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aisha. Abu Badr, you're up next. Please introduce yourself.
This is Muhammad Al-Khalfan. We have seen Zak in different events. He's a very shrewd and intelligent person. I'm looking forward for his presentation.
Nadir Al-Qasim, DTM Nadir, please introduce yourself.
Thank you for inviting me. This is Nazir Al-Qasim speaking to you from Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. And I'm always glad to listen to Zak because he has those wonderful thoughts and ideas that really enrich the person. So now I like to listen to him and maybe give him comments later on after he finishes. Back to you.
Thank you so much, DTM Nadir. And we have next Fatima Albish. Fatima, please introduce yourself.
Hello, this is Fatima from Saudi Arabia.
Last but not least, we have a whole group on the Shafin Ahmed Square. So if you can kindly put down your phone and introduce yourself.
Assalamu alaikum, DTA Ruina and all my Toastmaster colleagues. And I love all of you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Thank you so much, dear Hajja. Next up, we have Bin's iPhone.
Sorry, there was a problem with the microphone. Yes, how are you, Zak? I'm here to support Zak in his presentation, and the title looked interesting. So, looking forward to it.
Thank you, Bayan. And last but not least, I think I have everyone. The last but not least is our club president and dear friend to Zak, and this is Dr. Abdul Mohsen. Abdul Mohsen, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Abdul Mohsen. I'm very happy to see many lovely faces and hear lovely voices. And we all look forward to supporting Zak.
Thank you, Dr. Mohsen. Next, we have Kazi Zakaria Rahman. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your days today to join us on the Zoom call for my presentation. I really appreciate the support and the showing. And I hope I can teach you something today. I can expose you to something that you may not have known about before. I think it's a very important topic, as many have already mentioned, and it is underrepresented. And so just raising awareness about it is already one step further in hopefully driving some change, because I think international awareness is very important in this topic and it's sorely lacking. The Rohingya crisis, statelessness, struggle, and the search for a future. So today we'll be exploring the enduring plight of the Rohingya people, their struggle for recognition, and the search for viable solutions amidst displacement and statelessness. So I will outline the basic situation of the Rohingya as it stands and how we got there, a little bit of history. But I'll also talk about what different international organizations have been doing, what the Bangladesh government has been doing to try to help the Rohingya and bring them to a better state. Because right now it's truly a crisis. Their living conditions are squalor, and it's kind of stagnating, I would say. Nothing is really happening in the Rohingya world. They're sort of being forgotten. Aid is getting depleted. Donors are giving less money than they used to. So it's a big mess. So yeah, as I say here, it's a humanitarian catastrophe. So the Rohingya people are from Myanmar's Rakhine state, which is right bordering Bangladesh. So the Rakhine state is here, bordering Bangladesh, and then you have Cox's Bazar right at the border. And so that is where the Rohingya are mostly concentrated, which is also why the refugees go to Bangladesh. Even though Myanmar is a very big country, honestly, I don't think a lot of people would consider that Myanmar is bordering Bangladesh, because it is more in Southeast Asia, close to Laos and Thailand and China. So why the Rohingya go to Bangladesh is because they actually are geographically located close to Bangladesh. They are among the most severely persecuted and stateless groups globally, enduring systemic discrimination and violence for decades. So, understanding the Rohingya ethnic group. They're a Muslim ethnic group, which is important to note that Myanmar is a Buddhist country. So there is a lot of conflict on the basis of religion, a lot of Islamophobia going on in Myanmar. They have a unique cultural ethnicity distinct from the majority of Burmese population. They have their own language. You'll see later in this presentation why that's important. And they're closely related to Bangladesh. So the people from Cox's Bazar are not so different from the Rohingya people, But technically, at least politically, their ethnic identity is separate. The Rohingya trace their ancestry into the region back to the 15th century, with historical records indicating that Arab traders and Bengal migrants settled in the Rakhine long ago, contributing to their unique cultural heritage. But on top of that, I'll bring that up later again, but I'll just mention it here. So on top of the Rohingya being from Bengal traders and Arab traders, during the colonial period in the 19th and 20th centuries, early 20th century, the British really encouraged a lot of people from Bangladesh, from East Bengal at the time, to go to Myanmar for their own colonial ideas. And that really exacerbated the conflict even before Myanmar became a state. So there was already always some ethnic tension because they're a different ethnicity and because they have a different religion and language that persisted throughout the 20th century as well. So despite their long-standing, and we said 15th century, so really they've been settled there for a long time. The Rohingya have faced systemic discrimination and exclusion from citizenship, culminating in their classification as foreigners by the 1982 citizenship law, which stripped them of their legal rights. They're not really even considered Burmese in that sense. Historical roots to conflict. The colonial migration colonies are a big part of the historical roots of this conflict. Because it changed the population dynamics between the Buddhist locality and the Muslim immigrants, even though they had been present in that area since the 15th century. Nationalist policies, including the citizenship law, but also military campaigns. So military operations in the 70s and 90s targeted the Rohingya. So like I said, and there's always actually, since the 70s, there's been a presence of Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. So it's not a new conflict by any means. It really is quite entrenched. It's gotten a lot worse, but it's been present for a long time. So in August 2017, the Myanmar military initiated a large-scale military operation known for its brutal tactics, including mass killings, sexual violence, and the burning of villages. The campaign launched in response to attacks by the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army. No, it's not like it was a symmetrical conflict by any means. It was very asymmetrical, and a lot of regular people, civilians, got caught in the crossfire. Investigations by the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice were initiated, highlighting the need for accountability and protection of the Rohingya people. And I think they actually won their ICJ case, declaring it a genocide. But imagine there's nothing that really can be done in terms of security interventions by the Security Council because China and Russia are quite allied with Myanmar. And so they veto everything that comes out of the Security Council. And without Security Council approval, even if the ICJ gives a ruling, they cannot intervene militarily in Burmese sovereignty. So global comparison and scale. Understanding the Rohingya crisis in relation to other global displacement crises highlights its severity and need for attention. This part is quite interesting. So in August 2017, the first 3 weeks following the 27 military crackdown, 415,000 Rohingya refugees fled to Bangladesh. And shortly after, another 300,000 or so also fled. So this is the 700,000 number I was mentioning before. So it's very important to understand that. In comparison, the total number of refugees and migrants crossing the Mediterranean to Europe was 362,000 for the entire year. And they talk so much about, and this is 2016, this is like the height of the Syrian refugee crisis. And they're talking about it like how it's such a big crisis, how it's such a problem. But in reality, it's not even close to the numbers put up by the Rohingya the next year. So it's really crazy how public perception of the problem varies in these two cases. And you can easily theorize that the reason being one directly affects rich European countries, and the other is kind of locally confined to Southeast Asia. So they don't care as much because it doesn't affect them. So life in refugee camps. As I mentioned, there is more than 700,000 people living in the refugee camps. There's actually about 1.2 million currently living there in a couple different camps scattered around Cox's Bazar. It is one of the largest refugee settlements in the world, but Cox's Bazar certainly hosts a lot of refugees, basically. And that has its own troubles for the local economy and the people, and tensions between the local Bangladeshi people and the refugees because there's just such an overwhelming presence of them, which has also an economic strain on Bangladesh. So the cost of hosting them exceeds $1.5 billion, That's after all the international support. And actually, with the declining international support, it may begin to cost Bangladesh more and more year on year if the numbers continue to decline as they have. And, it should come as a surprise to any of us. Bangladesh is not a rich European country that can afford to shelve out $1.5 billion on an annual basis for not even its citizens. And that will also increase the tensions between the Bangladeshi people and the Rohingya, because the regular local people will say, well, how come you're not supporting me and my family and my people? Why are you supporting the foreigners that come here instead? And they're not being compensated for that support, really. So it really is placing a burden on Bangladesh. Not to mention the environmental impact, and that also has its own degradation of the tourism industry in Cox's Bazar. Cox's Bazar used to be really quite a tourist destination for Bangladesh, at least in Bangladeshi standards, but it's really losing that shine because of the rapid construction of shelters, the overcrowding and overpopulation from the refugees, deforestation and resource depletion. It's all making Cox's Bazar less desirable as a place to visit, which is big impacts on the economy. And rising social tensions, as I mentioned, facing competition for jobs and resources, leading to increased friction between refugees and host communities. There's also the problem of a lot of these Rohingya refugees are unable to work, like legitimately work in Bangladesh, and so they turn to crime and things like that. And that also gives them a bad reputation, gives the people a bad reputation, and increased social tensions. So statelessness and the consequences for the Rohingya. It's the foremost challenge that the Rohingya face, leading to denial of basic rights and protection. Without citizenship, they are excluded from legal frameworks that would provide safety and support. In Myanmar, their confinement to internally displaced prisons, camps, restricts their freedom and access to essential services. So there's about 1.2 million refugees in Cox's Bazar, but there's another 3.2 million Rohingya that are just internally displaced. And IDPs do not have refugee protections, nor, in fact, do the Rohingya in Bangladesh, because Bangladesh has not signed the 1954 Refugee Conventions. But the internally displaced persons have even fewer supports. Their lack of formal refugee status exacerbates further vulnerabilities, hindering access to healthcare, education, and legal rights. So the scale of the displacement of the Rohingya is actually so much more than the overcrowded camps in Cox's Bazar give credit to, which really blows your mind, because it's really like, wow, there's a very significant population that are really struggling and that are fighting for their rights right now in Myanmar and Bangladesh. The international actors and geopolitical interests. So the initial humanitarian response from the international community included aid and investigation into human rights and violations. But the thing about multilateralism and the UN system and things like this that you might have to understand is that political willpower tends to dissipate quite quickly. So even if in the moment in 2017, they were quite on top of it and they were really showing a lot of energy to try to solve the problem and try to help these people, by 2025, especially because it's flown under the public radar, a lot of aid has vanished and disappeared. As also there's like, because of the US pulling out of WHO, pulling out of the environmental programs, pulling out a lot of their aid, US aid as well. Aid has been shrinking in these past 2 years. Things like the Ukraine war and Palestine are taking the forefront, while Rohingyas take the back seat. And it shouldn't be a zero-sum game like this, but it is sometimes. So despite the documented atrocities, the UN ability to act has been limited by these geopolitical divides, preventing effective resolutions and prolonging the crisis. Key contributions of international organizations. We've already talked about the UN limitations. Let's talk about what they have been able to do. So the UNHCR, UN High Commission for Refugees, has facilitated the registration of Rohingya refugees, ensuring they receive legal protection and assistance. Their efforts aim to provide basic needs such as temporary shelters to improve living conditions in refugee camps. IOM's camp management and health support, the IOM, International Organization for Migration, has been instrumental in managing refugee camps, focusing on water, sanitation, and hygiene facilities to prevent disease outbreaks. Their logistical support includes ensuring that shelters are maintained and humanitarian supplies are distributed effectively. And MSF, Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, Medical Assistance and Health Services. So they have responded rapidly to the health needs of the Rohingya, providing medical care, vaccinations, and addressing malnutrition. Their presence is vital in emergency healthcare and refugee camps, especially for vulnerable populations. It was very hard for them during COVID, though, and COVID struck the Rohingya camp quite strongly. That's something to note. Repatriation. So this could be one of the ways that repatriation could be one of the ways to solve this problem in the long run. So repatriation is often viewed as the ultimate solution for the Rohingya crisis. And indeed, for most refugee crises, repatriation is the end goal. Yet multiple attempts in recent years have proven unsuccessful, feasible due to safety concerns and lack of legal rights in Myanmar. Therefore, alternative solutions must be explored. Local integration in Bangladesh, while beneficial for the Rohingyas' immediate needs, is politically sensitive and poses risk of social unrest. Already because the Rohingya gets so much money from the Bangladesh government, and they would be competing for the same jobs if they were integrating, it would be very difficult to facilitate their integration, especially given the fact that there's 1.2 million of them. Maybe if they were resettled in different parts of Bangladesh, it could be more feasible, but I don't know. In that sense, it also makes sense for third country resettling them outside of Bangladesh. Why should Bangladesh bear the whole full responsibility for the Rohingya people, essentially? But many countries maintain restrictive immigration policies, making it challenging to find permanent homes for the refugees. I think the rest of the global community is not doing enough to resettle these refugees, and they could easily take more than they are, but they don't. Long-term camp management and regional diplomacy, pathways to stability. As a more practical solution, long-term camp management can provide necessary stability for the Rohingya while addressing basic needs. This would involve improving infrastructure, education, and healthcare within the camps. But one second. I don't like camp management as the solution because it sort of just kicks the ball down the road. Like, these people don't want to live in camps, and it's not good for them to live in camps. They're living in sort of a limbo where they're not really at home, they're not really settled, even 8 years in the future after going to the refugee camp. And that's not really right. Moreover, regional diplomacy is crucial. Engaging countries such as ASEAN members, India, and China to create a cooperative framework can help share the burden and pressure Myanmar to reform its policies toward the Rohingya. Collaborative efforts at both the local and regional levels are essential to finding sustainable solutions for the crisis. And despite international awareness, the crisis remains intractable, with the Rohingya trapped between a homeland that rejects them and a host country grappling with the burdens of their presence. I would say international awareness could be a lot more. I don't think the average person knows about the Rohingya crisis in the West. It's not really something we talk about. So maybe that's also part of why the crisis is intractable, because there's not enough political pressure for any sort of solution. The path forward. So there's an urgent need for comprehensive solutions. The ongoing crisis highlights the urgent need. Accountability for Myanmar through the courts, but also through actual practical measures, I think is important. International legal mechanisms, because you can win the moral fight just through legal mechanisms. But if there is no enforcement of these legal mechanisms, then they're kind of useless for the people that actually are affected, the Rohingya themselves. Sustained humanitarian support, camp management being a part of that in the short term at least, and inclusion of Rohingya voices. So political solutions must involve the voice of the Rohingya community. And I think that's also an important note to end on, that they need their own political representation to a certain extent, and they need their sort of Greta Thunberg or Malala Yousafzai or someone like this, someone to sort of champion their rights on the international scale. That'd be very good for them. And if they could get that, all right, more power to them. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you very much. This was great.
Thank you.
That's very exact. There's a lot behind it.
Yeah.
Although we are a very poorest country in the world, but we need somebody to say, explain that our country, how is the condition of our country. And Jack, I think you are the correct person to spread our news and our views everywhere in the world.
For those who don't know, Haja Mahmouda is one of the 4 oldest Toastmasters in Saudi Arabia back in the COVID days. She has delivered about 12 speeches, and she has a YouTube channel that I can forward later on.
That was very nice. Thank you, Zach.
So I keep up to date on some of this geopolitics, at least to some degree, and a lot of that resonated. Let me just address a few things because I think it adds a little bit of context to some of this. The Rohingya people are not just one people. There's 5 or 6 tribal cultural groups with different languages in that same space. And the Arakan basically is the main group there. But there's others. There are some that are not Muslims, not Buddhist. There are Hindus in there, and there are other groups, including pagan sort of groups. They're all being attacked or have been attacked by the Burmese army, and these are very genocidal type of attacks. But you've got to understand what's behind it. Unlike Palestine or even Ukraine, where a foreign power is sort of colonizing or doing the colonial cleansing, horrible as it is, the thing in Burma is it's their own country. This is not a foreign power coming in, but they look at the people, as Zach said, as foreigners, even though they've been living there for 400 or 500 years. Okay. And so they look at these people and they call them the hill tribes, the hill people, the hilly people, whatever, right? And unfortunately, so do the Bengalis. The Bangladesh culture is also deemed them as foreigners. A lot of them, obviously, from the Burmese side, but a lot of them are also on the Chittagong side of Bangladesh.
From my own personal side, I've personally been very disappointed with Aung San Suu Kyi, if I'm saying her name right. I think she turned out to be a very disappointing figure. I don't know if that's something worth including in the discussion.
Why does Burma want to attack their own people? Why does Burma want to cleanse? If they're not an occupying power, why do they need to? Well, now we get into the real geopolitics and the politics of oil and gas and supplies and outlets and ports. So now we get India and China and Russia and many other countries and even America playing this geopolitical game in order to get to the minerals and the resources up north. So that's complicating it. So now we get back to the numbers. Yeah, we're talking about millions of people. My research has showed over 3 million in the Bangladesh area. Now that may be a huge exaggeration by the Bangladesh government, who needs that those kind of numbers in order to get the world's attention and get the aid flowing, which, as we know, doesn't always flow to the right people either. But it's a mess. And the one last thing I want to talk about that part is when I was there, you feel the tension on the streets. Because as Zach said, when you don't give people economic opportunities or even a future, when you don't have schools that operate, what do the youth do? Literally, they do anything to survive.
I have a question, Zach.
Yes, please, Abdul Mohsen.
Just following your father and the interesting information he gave, your talk, it was very interesting because you know, all we read is, you know, soon we will have trillionaires, the world and artificial intelligence, and we read all these articles about, you know, how things will be a dystopia starting 2027 and how the world will be a better place. And we're just consuming all this material thinking that, you know, we're heading towards a better place or a better world, when in reality, you know, when you just shed some light on, you know, whether it was the Rohingya or Palestine or, you know, to some extent Ukraine, or even a similar situation in Kuwait, where they also have people who don't have nationalities or passports, you realize that we're still far, far, far away from, you know, the conversation of living in a dystopia and the trillionaires, and, you know, even conversations about UBI, universal based income for everyone. um, my question to you is, you know, the Rohingyan people aside, Tayyib, should this situation remain as is, what is the short-term and long-term negative impact on Bangladesh itself? Because we're not talking about a stable country or a rich country. You know, as you said yourself, they have their own issues, and it has caused some resentment between the Bangladesh and the, you know, Rohingya hosting these people and having resources, you know, spent not on locals. You know, should the situation remain unchanged, what is the short-term and long-term effect on Bangladesh economically, socially, on the government, and on the people?
Yeah. Well, short term, the World Food Program had to go from their rations per person from about $12 per day to $8 per day, because the donors could not reach and fulfill the needs of the World Food Program. So people are literally starving in the Rohingya camps because they're being squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And that only makes them turn more to crime because they can't get conventional jobs. And that only increases the social tensions between the Bangladeshi people and the Rohingya. So in the short term, it's more of a squeeze, more of a squeeze, more heading toward this direction of difficulty and tension, and ultimately, in the long term, it's unsustainable. It's absolutely unsustainable in the long term. But in the long term, the consequences could be, if the situation remains as is, then maybe the Rohingya will start to settle, and hope like maybe they will start to settle in, because they'll have been there how long term, like 25 years, something like that, 30 years. They will understand Bengali. They will, you know, they will be there for the majority of their lives, many of them. So at that point, maybe they will start to settle, but that will also create more competition, more tension. You know, even it could lead to violent outbreaks on the extreme side between the locals and the Rohingya. You never know, but it's just heading toward this boiling point. You understand?
I understand, but why don't the Bangladesh, why doesn't the Bangladeshi government, you know, just give them nationalities, at least the ones who aren't criminals, right, and allow them to leave? You know, at least with the passport, they can leave. They can go apply for immigration in Canada or Germany or all the other programs that, you know, the world.
Why would that require them to get Bengali citizenship first, though? I agree, third country resettlement should be definitely one of the biggest solutions, but they can already settle them as refugees in Canada, in Germany, in Netherlands, in these places. Why give them the Bangladeshi citizenship? It doesn't make sense to me,
Actually,
because
also, let me add one thing to that. The Bangladeshi passport is one of the weakest passports in the world. I think it's ranked something like 160 out of 197 or 201. So what happens is, giving citizenship is probably the opposite effect. If someone's a refugee, other countries have obligations and liabilities and treaties they've traded. So if a boat person, so-called, lands in Greece or in Italy or in France, as a refugee, The European countries cannot just turn around and say, well, you're going back to another country where you have citizenship. It's very difficult to do that. And that's what the courts are still dealing with those. But once they become a citizen of any one country, then yes, you can deport them back to their country. So having said all that, the refugees from Bangladesh alone are not being entered into other countries. A third nation's citizens, like the Rohingya people, will stand no chance. This is the reality of what the doors are. They're all closed.
Yani, I'm just thinking out loud because, you know, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but at least giving them the opportunity to leave with the Bangladeshi passport, even if it's 160, because, you know, people still look for cheap labor, and cheap labor, you know, affects even the United States. The whole reason why they're building the wall and whatnot is because, you know, the people coming from down south, and, you know, and the cheap labor they can bring. But at least having some kind of formal route where, you know, they can at least leave and become, and I'm sorry if this word is offensive, but cheap labor anywhere, you know what I mean? You know, drivers, maids, nannies, construction.
But then
You know,
in that case, they would be directly competing with the Bangladeshis that want those same jobs, the cheap labor jobs. So it does create increased competition and can push out the local Bangladeshis from those positions because they are still coveted positions. It may not seem like it, but a lot of people are vying for those cheap labor positions. So just it's not like they're available for the taking for the Rohingya.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
the
I
truth.
understand, but, you know, at least turn the Rohingya from something you spend money on to something that can make you money, because I'm sure that
Absolutely true.
they're taxed, right?
Yeah. So this is, you know, when Zach was talking about the way forward and possible resettlement, this is a really decent thing. This is what you're suggesting is actually a really good macro level program. If someone could say, you know what, the world needs something, let's say some really large global scale project, build a dam that requires 1 million people, build another Great Wall of China equivalent. And every Rohingya would actually sign up to say, yes, sign me in.
Thank you, Kaz. DTM Nadir has a comment or a question as well.
What happened to the Rohingya people in Saudi Arabia? We have about 250 to 160. These are human stories. What you like to do in a presentation like this is to bring someone's name and tell me about that person, what he's doing, how his life changed from going from that part of the world to this part of the world. People went to Australia, people went to United States. So pick one who have really suffered, and then there is an arc of story that really triumphed, because we are not always gonna look at the miseries. I know somebody mentioned about Palestine. We live it till now very close to us. But there is one thing that you mentioned in the history, and it is the root cause of all problems, which is the empire of England, you know, England empire. They went everywhere and they made problems everywhere. I'm not talking about Palestine with the Balfour. I'm talking about everywhere. You just mentioned that over there, they send the Bangladesh to another place, even here in our Middle East, between Kuwaitis and Iraqis, between Saudi Arabia and UAE. You mentioned anywhere, you know, this UK went there as a colonizer. So maybe these things, but touch on these stories, because that will make me really attached to you. And I say, oh, there is hope. Thank you so much, Zach. Wonderful presentation.
I could have done a case study. That's for sure. Actually, just so you know, this presentation might actually inform my master's thesis that I have to do in about a year from now. And I'm considering doing case studies and speaking to people directly at Rohingya camps in Cox's Bazar, if I'm able, in the following year. So I am definitely thinking about how I can tie in people and like stories, human stories, oral histories to this topic. I think that would be very helpful. And thank you for
Wonderful.
the opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Whether it's success story or whether it's you know, a kind of a typical common story. It just does add that touch of kind of what it looks like in realistic terms and so on. Zak, great job, man. I really appreciate this. Really appreciate the discussion. Very insightful.
Thank you. Inshallah, we will have remnants of this ripple effect so that people who may be interested in reaching out, we do go to Bangladesh a lot. So if anyone's interested in joining us in the future, it'd be nice to make at least a change in one or two of the lives that we could maybe meet in the path of our journey in this world we call life.
I'm from Bangladesh, like I said before, and you realize that you know quite a bit about it, but when it's actually presented in a format like this, then you get to know a lot more, right? You get to know the historical context, you get to know what's happening in a day in and day out basis, right? And the way forward, right? That's more important. You know, there's a whole message about awareness, which is, you know, forums like this, but you know, what are we doing? And, you know, there are other conflicts around the world. Palestine issue is a big one. Same situation, right? You know, more awareness, better it is for the message to be sent across, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been great.
Thank you. Okay. With
Well-
that, end chat now. Thank you all for coming and have a lovely rest of your day.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Assalamu alaikum.
you.